Hi there. It's Friday. What does that mean? I've got my video blog. I will put the link to it below. You'll either need to copy paste it or click on it depending on where you're seeing this. But I am having more of an informal patio chat on a messy patio, the place that I really need to focus on getting cleaned up soon. But please take a listen to it. At the end, I am asking for some feedback from you. So after you hear it, let me know if there's any way that I can help you or if you have suggestions or things that you would like to hear. Hope you enjoy it. Susan Ballou here with Life Health Rewritten. Just a quick reminder that anything in this video is not meant to be medical advice, but for entertainment and information purposes only. So please enjoy. I'm recording this evening before on Thursday on a very hot evening. I think it was like 109 today. I didn't see the official, but when I was running back and forth to go help out with my grand fur baby, it said, I saw on my car thermometer that it was 109 degrees, so definitely warm. And I'm sitting out on the patio that is not super wonderfully clean, but I'm out here. So I'm going to veer off just a little bit for this Friday, and I just want to talk a little bit about where I'm at, what I'm doing, what my goals are. I have had people reach out to me and talk to me a little bit about some of things that they're dealing with and you know, the food related stuff that we're working on, and I will continue diving into that because I do feel like it's really important, but I want to do really a good job on it. So I think Tuesday I may talk a little bit more about this whole process of putting this business together and all of the pieces and all of the learning and all of the stuff. A lot of you saw my, I forayed into doing a kind of a story theme and then showing my low carb bread that I use to help me stay on track and that I've used to help me lose weight and keep from cheating all of the time. And boy, that was a process. One little video that was just a few minutes long took quite some time and lots of editing and figuring out some new stuff. I'm stretching the brain and lots of learning. It has been fun to learn. But, you know, I'm also in the process of, while I'm doing all this, building a business takes some time. And what do I do in the meantime? You know, looking at what kind of bridge, so to speak, do I want to take, or should I take, as I'm working on, you know, putting the business together and getting to the point where I also probably need some funds coming in as I'm doing it. So, you know, for those of you that do believe in prayer, I definitely appreciate your thoughts and prayers on that for me. But, you know, just hanging in there and knowing that step by step I'm still here and doing okay, and I've survived this year, and grateful, beyond grateful, that I did not know what this year would bring, because I probably wouldn't have had the bravery to do it, for sure. What a year. But I did get the book that I'm going to keep on working on. So it's the book of Dr. Robert Lustig, and talks a lot about, like, it's, you know, we've talked about a little bit about it, how he goes into all of the different conditions and things that are related to our diets. And I've thought a lot about, why did I end up going down this road? And a lot of it was because this was the vote when I started my online kind of my marketing thing that I was putting together. They wanted that one of their first steps was to reach out to your friends and family that knew you well and ask them what they thought that you did well and what they knew you were passionate about. And I heard back from a lot of people, and they were supposed to put 2 to 3 things, and they put 2 to 3 things. And there wasn't one response that didn't have this as one of those things. So they kind of looked at me and they were like, okay, Susan, looks like this is, you know, your niche and your calling. And honestly, I love it. But it has become even almost more of a calling as I've dived into it even more. I knew for myself what was helpful and what was working and what wasn't working, and what made me feel sick and made me feel inflamed and caused all of the different things that I've been talking about, like terrible GI stuff, reflux being one of them, but not all. You know, just anytime that I would eat certain foods, particularly grains, knowing that I was going to pay for it. And then sugars, I pay for it in other ways, swelling and like if you've had for some people, if they've had too much coffee and their heart rate starts jumping around, I could always tell when it wasn't coffee that did it to me, but sugar would, and just all kinds of different things. And yet when I clean it up and go healthy, and for me, healthy doesn't go along with other people, but I feel my best at meat, and particularly a lot of times a little bit more on the red meat. And if I'm going to have veggies, then definitely real low carb veggies, and occasionally something like berries and that type of thing. Now, other people are completely different, but the thing that I have consistently seen across the board is that a lot of people like my age are struggling. They're starting to gain that weight. They're starting to feel bad. And then people that are older, like a couple of decades older, having terrible health issues. And when you start going through not only his book, but researcher after researcher after researcher that has started diving into this, talking about all of the issues. I love listening to Dr. Eric Westman. He is a endocrinologist in the diabetic clinic at Duke University, and he's been one that actually he's been going at this since Dr. Adkins many years ago, and always likes to be sure everybody knows that no, Dr. Adkins didn't die from his diet. He died from falling on an icy sidewalk. So anyway, squirrel. But it's one of the things that's important to him that he's like, I want people to know that, because of course there were rumors that went around. But he has done a ton of research and stuff in the clinic, and really working with people and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and seeing all of these diseases and trying to help them. And low carb being the primary treatment that really works for sometimes even completely reversing the type 2 diabetes. And then the other guy that I've talked about, Dr. Jason Fung, who does a lot of work with low carb and of course intermittent fasting, and anything from, that can be from going 24 hours, or sometimes people can do longer, or it can be, I don't eat all day long like I used to do. I always called it grazing. From the moment my feet hit the floor, I wanted to eat, and then I would eat and eat and eat. Have a little bit here, have a little bit there, have a little bit there. That's honestly, in addition to going back to the diet, the foods that I shouldn't have eaten, that's how I gained back a bunch of the weight as well after my surgery. Because yeah, your stomach doesn't hold a whole lot, but if you're constantly feeding it, then of course things are happening. Well, now based on this research, like is in here, I understand that when I'm constantly feeding it, every time I put that food in my mouth, I have raised my insulin levels. And in spite of what people are told, insulin does not save you by, keeping your blood sugar down. What it does is it helps turn that blood sugar into fat to store in your liver. If you already have so much sugar on board that you've already gotten all the energy you need off of it, can't use any more for energy, so it has to do something with it. So it basically, science made easy, it packs it into fat and does things like storing it in your liver and other places that it really has no business being in. Thus the reason, like we talked about last week, the fatty liver disease. But all these other things, I was talking to a friend of mine this week, and we were discussing the whole Alzheimer's issues. And there's enough research that has been really looked at with all of this, that they are now calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. So issues there. You just look at thing after thing. Anything that is related to inflammation can be traced back to that kind of ugly sounding thing. But if I'm feeding myself with stuff that is killing the lining of my gut, and then my gut is leaking poisons basically into my body. I mean, that's a very simplified, non-scientific, kind of gross way of saying it, but call it what it is. then of course, whatever my issues are, whatever my body's weaknesses are, whatever the things are that maybe do have a genetic component that are my weaknesses, then that is going to be what starts yelling and trying to tell my body to stop because it doesn't like it. I'm poisoning it, you know? So I think that's where I've started realizing that I do really have an interest in trying to help with this, because it's hard, and it's hard to stop. It's hard to not go back to the things that taste good, that are the foods that have been made. I mean, let's face it, sugar and wheat flour, things, and some of these oils, they are flavor enhancers. They are created to make the food be something that you take one bite, lights your brain up, and you want another bite. Works on the, the receptors in your brain, and it says, woohoo, give me more. Why do you think you open a bag of whatever your favorite, treat is, whether it's candy or, for me, potato chips or crackers, and one bite is never enough? It's because of what it does to your brain. Lights your brain up, makes you want more. But then you combine that with what we talked about last time as well, where on top of it lighting your brain up to want more, on top of it, then every time you have that insulin spike, because every time you put anything with any calories of anything, whether it's liquid or food in your mouth, the insulin is released to help deal with that stuff that you've put in there. You've got to have it to help metabolize everything, to deal with everything, or you won't survive. That's what happens with type 1 diabetics. They have to have insulin. Their body does not make it. They have to have that insulin to help with all of the process. But every time you put that in, as a person who is like myself, I am not diabetic, but I do have all of the symptoms for the metabolic syndrome, or where my body just, it's like, okay, you've got more and more insulin, we're having to use more and more insulin because your body's getting less and less responsive to insulin. And so that's where you can actually then get yourself to the point where you start cutting back, start doing, eating less amount of times a day and less foods that jack the blood sugar up really high, needing even more insulin. And then your body actually can become more sensitive to that insulin as well, which then can also be a problem for someone like me, especially where I'm post-bariatric surgery. If I do really eat something that I shouldn't, then now that I'm more sensitive to the insulin, it will shoot out a ton of insulin, and then my blood sugar just drops like a rock, which of course is what's called hypoglycemia. I went a long time with being able to eat a whole lot of stuff without having that. When I first had my surgery, I would have a lot of issues, and then got to the point where I just kind of built up my tolerance, eating what I shouldn't. And then going back to behaving more when I do misbehave. It's like overdosing on something, and can be really bad, like to the point where my blood sugar bottoms out so bad I have to get some protein or something in really quickly, because it's not a good situation. Or overeating and getting really sleepy and not functioning too well that way, and then the whole cycle begins. So honestly, the best thing for me is staying on it. But then why does my brain and my mouth and my emotions all want to have this stuff that I know I will eat it and think, oh, maybe this time it'll be okay? How silly is that, honestly? But it has to do with a whole combination of things. It has to do with the chemicals in your body. It has to do with the hormones in your body. And if I get to myself to the point where I'm not having this stuff, and this is where the whole keto thought process comes in. And I know keto is a bad word to a lot of people. They're like, oh, that's a fad diet. But let's talk it through. This is a diet where your body, you're not feeding it the stuff that's going to jack up the blood sugar and make you pack away fat, okay? So first of all, what it does then is when you need energy, your brain, things like that, need sugar, so it's got to pull that fat from somewhere to then metabolize it and use it for energy. So if you're not feeding it a bunch of that stuff that's turning into sugar, where's it going to come from? Well, for somebody like me, I've got plenty everywhere. I mean, I could stand up and show you. I still have plenty everywhere, even though I've lost inches. So that's the process of how that works. Now, what you will hear people say is, oh yeah, that'll work. The problem with it is it's not sustainable. Well, why is it not sustainable? Well, it's not sustainable because you also are dealing with the addictive part of the food. So, is it sustainable to go without alcohol for an alcoholic? It is, but you have to have a lot of support and go through stuff. It's not just like you can wake up one day and say, okay, I've been drinking 10 beers a day and, however many cocktails or whatever, shots or whatever a day for the last 10 years, and I'm going to quit today. It doesn't work. I used to have to help people in the hospital who tried that and then ended up injured because it doesn't work. So we would have to help them get down, and start working through the process. And so that's what I feel like some of this has been, even for myself. I have called this the boiling the frog diet because I have had to little by little, and that's kind of gross, I know, but what do they say? It's that whole, how do you boil a frog? Well, if you put it in hot water, it's going to jump out. So you put it in cold and slowly turn up the burner. No cruelty to animals here. No, don't cook frogs. It's just a saying, but it kind of works with the idea of slowly making changes. And so that's what I've been doing over the years. And I've finally got myself to the place where I'm starting to understand that I feel so much better. So even then, why do sometimes I still go on vacation? Oh, I'm on vacation. Let's just go eat and then pay for it for a week or two. Well, part of it is the emotional attachment. Part of it is still like addictions and things like that. And then part of it is the hormones, like we talked about, because when you're spiking your insulin, you're putting insulin in we talked about that last week, where it raises your ghrelin, which is your hunger, because it binds the leptin, which is the satiety hormone. And so there's just a ton of different things that are all involved in this. And so that's where I feel like this whole last year has been a focus on how can I put stuff together to help people with this. A lot of you know that shortly after my husband passed away, I actually ended up signing up for a 6-month course that was on kind of counseling and coaching. Is called Alive and Free. So in that program, we did a lot of real deep dives on why some of our behavior, what triggers it, why is it, what are the things, kind of going back and really understanding what causes a person to do things like overeat when you shouldn't, when it hurts you, turn to food as comfort, and what are some other things that you can do instead. Just a whole lot of information and help throughout that whole 6 months. So in this program, I got a lot of help with being able to take a look at, for me, food is comfort. Why is that? And all the pieces with it, and being able to help other people take a look at their food issues, and for the part that is the emotional part, I came to the point where I really realized community is one of the big things that really helps, and being able to talk through this and really explore, why do I have such a hard time with this? And if I know that I have support in helping me, not eat things that are going to hurt my body, and I know hurt my body, that does help me some, And so a combination of everything between the dealing with, trying to basically hack my chemistry and hormones in my body to help from that direction, and then have the emotional support and understanding of some of my relationship with food, and then have community that is supporting and joining me on help, dealing with their food issues, whatever they are, and then taking a look at the whole science part of it. It's like this whole complete, from every angle, It's been fascinating and also very helpful. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, is just kind of my journey with that, where I'm at. I will go on and continue more next week, hopefully, on kind of diving into some of the different conditions that are associated with all of the inflammation in the food that we have. But I wanted to talk about this. I think possibly on my Tuesday podcast, I may even deal with more of the steps of putting the business together and all of the things I've been learning, and kind of my trying to figure out, should I go this way? Should I go that way? What do I want to do with all of this? And, when I ended up signing up to kind of get started with the whole business thing, it was with the thought that I was going to start this business, and have it kind of put together and ready for someday when I retired. Was without really the clear thought that I would be done working and then not have another job really, other than my, like my part-time teaching and that type of thing. But that all kind of snowballed then when I lost my husband, because at that particular point, it just, everything kind of came together this way. And then you get to the point where you're like, well, I'm into it this far. How do you kind of divide your time and go do something else and keep this going? Because honestly, I feel like I'm working full time with this, with everything I've been doing. So that's where we're at. I would love to have feedback, input. I would love to know whether people feel like this is valuable, to hear this information about the food science, about what it's doing to our body, about the diseases that it's causing, about the whole emotional impact, the chemical and the hormonal side effects of stuff, and even, talking about putting the community together. Part of what I'm doing with my online program that I'm working on building is putting a program together for that. And I may even do like some small things. The program that I'm working on with this one is large, and it's like a 3-month thing, and it's an investment. But I feel like has extremely valuable content for people that are in a situation where they're just not making things work. You work your butt off in the gym and can't lose anything. You tried this pill, that pill, whatever. You hit the point in your age where you can't figure out what's happening. And a lot of people are where I was several years ago, and scared, frankly. And I've done years of this research, and if I can help other people not have to do years of the research and kind of fast forward to help them figure out how to discover what works for their body, because boy, that is one of the things that I've really discovered. Lots of individualities. There are certain foods that definitely are poisons, but there's a whole lot of other variances on the foods that maybe aren't poison, but for example, some people are way healthier feeling on like a more highly vegetarian style diet, or say the Mediterranean diet. They do really well with it. I am not. That isn't me. But I certainly have been interested talking to people who are, and it tells me, okay, your body is set up a little bit differently than mine is, but we all come from the same issues of how do I discover the foods that work for me? What are the things? And I've come up with, some systems on how I do that. And what's the science behind these things that aren't working for me, like we've talked about? And what do I do about the parts when I want to go eat the things? Like I have a hard time driving by certain donut shops, for example, when the light is on saying we got hot, fresh donuts. Things like that call to me. They say, Susie. So how do you deal with that? And quite honestly, it's a little bit like I think I talked about last time, or at least old friends of mine, walking into certain places and then having to pray and say, God, I know this will hurt me. I know that I will feel terrible. I am having a terrible time, though, not just yielding to the temptation. And even though it's not like it's, oh, that's a terrible sin to do stuff, if I hurt myself, certainly not wise. And especially if it's something where I know I do this and I'm going to have a week of pain and suffering. Why is that worth it? So, just a few things. Please get a hold of me. Direct message me. let me know what your thoughts are. And like I asked, does this content help? Are there specific things that you are dealing with? Maybe you're like me and you're like, well, I have this other diet that really works well for me, but I've noticed these foods make me feel sick, but I'm having a hard time with it. I also got like a support group that we're putting together that's kind of a free thing. And then, like I said, I'm working on putting together some small, kind of maybe low ticket type things. Sorry, we've got a helicopter going over. Don't know if that's loud or not. Like some little webinars and things like that where we can kind of dive deep with just a few people and see if there's places where we can really help, or even if there's something where it's like, man, I would like that one-on-one to just talk about how can I deal with this. I could put something together with that as well in a program. So honestly, it's been a tough year and sometimes kind of hard to figure out why a person ends up where you're at. But I do feel like as I've been learning about all of this and seeing all of the different pieces and the ways that, even with my background and what I've learned and my struggles, if I can be of help to people, I would love to. I would love to help people prevent themselves from having to go into some of the terrible issues and conditions that are related to inflammation that can be avoided. Helping people kind of deal with the whole, how do I not constantly return to this? So if there is anything that you feel like you could use help on, or any information that you would like to know, any topics that you would like to cover, or even if you feel like, yeah, I really don't want to go sit in like some big program with people, but I really would like to meet with somebody one-on-one, we could even talk about that. Like I said, I do have certification on it now, and I'm here if you need something. So just reach out to me. We'll talk soon.